Welcome to the Manitoba Ag Days podcast, where we hear from some of the most relevant, up-to-date, informational speakers in our industry. In episode 16, Kim Keller, a producer from Melfort, Saskatchewan, tells her story. How a tweet sparked a conversation about mental health in ag.
Hey everyone, so as we're sitting here today, we're going to be covering what can be a bit of a tough topic. So I'm going to start by asking everyone some questions. And as I ask these three questions, I just want everyone to think to themselves how they'd answer, yes or no, and to really reflect on those answers. So first question, have you ever lost a family member, a friend, or a community member to suicide? Do you or anyone you know live with mental health issues or a mental illness? Have you or anyone you know ever needed to talk to someone but had no idea where to go or are afraid of the stigma attached to talking about mental health? So as I look around the room, I see a few heads nodding, some looks of uncertainty, and getting this conversation started around mental health and agriculture has been so important. And each time I ask those three questions, it becomes even more crucial that we keep this conversation going, and why it's even more important that we're all here today to talk about it. So as you heard, I'm Kim Keller. I'm a farmer in Northeast Saskatchewan, and I farm there with my parents and my brother, and I actually just returned to the farm full-time. Prior to that, in 2012, I co-founded a farm tech company called Farm at Hand with a friend of mine. That took us out to Vancouver until 2016, when we sold that company to another Canadian company. I also co-founded Saskatchewan Women in Ag, and we've grown to be a very active and positive organization within the industry. And lastly, the reason why I'm here today is I'm an advocate for a more open conversation around mental health and mental illness in agriculture and tackling the stigma that exists. So I just want to say thank you so much to Ag Days for having us here today. Andruw Jones Britton with the University of Guelph recently conducted a study focusing on the mental health of Canadian farmers. That survey ran from September 2015 to January 2016 and included farmers across all sectors across Canada. And these were some of the findings. 35% of farmers meet the classification for depression. 45% of farmers report suffering from high stress. 58% of farmers meet the definition for the anxiety classification. The most concerning number out of all those stats that you see, though, is the 40% of farmers that won't seek help because they're afraid of the repercussion due to the stigma that exists around talking about mental health and mental illness. However, this also tells us that 60% of farmers would seek help. So how do we get that 60% to 100%? 100% of farmers realizing that they're not alone and they have an entire industry behind them. In Canada, we don't have really good reporting around farm suicides because most are reported as farm accidents. But we do know that in the US, farmers are twice as likely to commit suicide than the rest of the population. 6 months ago, I received a message on Twitter from someone that I had never met or even spoken to. However, during my time at Farm at Hand, he had seen us trying to push forward the conversation to support farmers' mental health. We had started a t-shirt campaign to support mental health, and we were donating that money to the Farm Stress Line. That started in 2015, and it still continues today. During that time, they saw us trying to push forward the conversation. And after losing a farming client to suicide, he thought I might be able to help. He was looking for resources to help not only that family, who had just lost that family member, but also he knew that some of his other farming clients were struggling. When I first got that message, I had no idea what to do. I thought to myself, and the only resource I could give him was the Farm Stress Line. And to me, at this time, it wasn't good enough. The fact that 2 years after launching our t-shirt campaign and starting the conversation around mental health and agriculture, and nothing had changed, didn't sit very well with me. The next day, I sent out a tweet and a call to action for agriculture to do more. Ag, we gotta do more. I received a message yesterday that kept me up thinking of how we do more. Farm stress is real, and suicide's real. What followed that tweet was a series of events that I didn't expect or was even prepared for. From the outpouring of support from farmers and industry, to even mainstream media covering mental health and agriculture. Within a week, it was covered by everyone from Gormley to the CBC and everyone in between. Corporate ag was even willing to take up the charge. It's been remarkable, and there's been so much happening really quickly. In support of their farmers, corporate ag has been stepping up in a big way. Companies are making mental health a priority discussion, not only at farm shows like this week, but also with their frontline staff who often hear of these struggles and hear of this happening, but have no idea what to do or how to help. I've been working with a few folks in the industry to come up with strategies to help their frontline staff and help their clients recognize the early signs that someone might be struggling. All too often, after a tragedy, we talk to each other and we say, you know, I should have known. I knew something had changed. These supports can range from training in mental health first aid along physical first aid, to confidential third-party counseling, and even workshops for their clients. Many others in the industry are simply lending their voice in the conversation and are supporting initiatives and campaigns around mental health and ag, which is also such a great start and very important. While the efforts from corporate ag have been amazing and very much needed, I have to say the most amazing outcome out of all of this has been the amount of farmers sharing their stories and talking about mental health and mental illness. These conversations have been happening in private with their family and friends, but also in public, on social media and at events like today. Also, farmers are showing more concern for their fellow farmers. They realize that someone might be going through a rough patch on their farm, or something else might be happening in their life. And they actually take the time to reach out to that other farmer in a really meaningful and genuine way, not just a passing, oh, hey, how's it going? Yeah, I'm good. They're actually taking the time to realize that maybe someone didn't get all their harvest off, maybe someone didn't get all their seeding in, or maybe something else is going on, and they're taking the time to ask and listen. I was, and I still am, so blown away by the sheer number of people who are sharing their stories and who are willing to step up in any way necessary to help this conversation move forward. Many others are just truly grateful that it's finally at least being talked about. And I want to give you an example of when this really hit home for me. During an APAS Carbon Summit this past summer, the membership voted in favor of adopting a resolution recognizing the importance of working with both farmers and government to improve rural health offerings, and they specifically mentioned mental health. This was only 2 weeks after that initial tweet had been sent out. During this event, I also moderated my very first panel on mental health and ag. After the panel, there was a few folks standing and lined up at the mics. I remember I looked over at my panel and we were all ready for some backlash. Instead, what we got were tears and experiences and thank yous. The very first guy at the mic stood up and he goes, "It's about time we're talking about this." Then he held up both of his hands and he says, "If I really think about it, and I start to count how many people I have lost to suicide, I run out of fingers." That's when it really hit me and everyone else in that room how close to the surface this really was. I have never been more proud to be a part of agriculture and what we're doing for the people behind the production. So what can we do for our own mental health? We talk a lot about risk on the farm, but often we don't consider that our own health is the biggest risk that faces every farm out there today. So now that we're actually finally talking about it, what can we do? Well, for starters, understand what it means to be healthy for you. Being healthy doesn't just mean being free of an illness or disease physically, but it means having balance. It doesn't just mean finding an article off of Facebook or what works for your neighbor. It really means what's healthy for you. Secondly, find, build, and utilize a support network. This might be a network of family and friends, or this might be a network that you're going to build, and you can build that in any way, on social media, maybe even ag Twitter. There is no hard and fast rule about where you build your network, but it is important that it's supportive, healthy, and safe. When necessary, seek help. This might be counseling, coaching, or even calling the farm stress line in the time of need. If it's someone else you know that's looking for help, be supportive and helpful in their effort. You don't need to be the expert. Sometimes just being supportive is all someone needs to take that next step to getting help. And lastly, we all know that being a farmer means spending a lot of time of our own and making an endless stream of very critical decisions with not a lot of information and not having very much time away from the farm during a growing season. And I know this might sound a little bit out of left field, but how can we use technology to ease some of that stress and take some of that pressure off of us every day? I mean, look where we are today. We're at a show and we're seeing endless amounts of different technology, from apps to implements, to tools, to even autonomous machines. And it's really just the beginning of where this could go for agriculture. Take autonomous equipment, for example. Where could you put that time that's usually spent in a cab that was replaced by an autonomous machine doing that work? And what could that mean for your health? Could that mean more time spent on other parts of your business that are currently causing you stress? Or could it mean more time with your friends and family? Or could it mean something that we haven't even begun to think about yet? Think about that, and maybe we can start to reconsider how we think about technology on the farm outside of just outside of just agronomy and data collection, or even autonomous machines, and how that impacts other parts of our life that aren't easily quantifiable. Since 2015, I've been asking ag to do more about mental health and mental illness. 2 years later, I'm still asking that. But what do I mean by do more? Well, we gotta start somewhere, and I hate to tell you guys, it's not near as groundbreaking as some of the other things you're gonna learn at this show this week. It's pretty easy. It's talk more, ask more, and listen more. Talk about mental health and mental illness. This doesn't just mean sharing your personal stories and experiences. This means just talking about it so it normalizes the conversation and makes it not so tough to have. Ask more. I see more and more farmers today asking questions and learning about what they can do to improve their mental health and even live and thrive with a mental illness. We need to gain that understanding, and how are we going to do that if we don't ask questions? Listen more. Sometimes all someone needs is an ear to listen. I've chatted with some folks from the farm stress line, and they say they get a number of calls of just people needing to talk, and they had no idea who they could talk to. If we can keep doing more in just these 3 areas, we will accomplish some pretty amazing things in our industry and move towards destigmatizing mental health and mental illness. There are a lot of resources out there, but probably the most important one is each other. And I mean each other in this room and each other in this industry. And I know that might sound a little bit corny, but really think about it. No one knows what a farmer goes through every day, every month, or every year than another farmer. So as we listen to Leslie and Marcia, and you all leave here later today, please remember that no one's alone, and we can all be the change that agriculture needs to be to keep moving this conversation forward. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Manitoba Ag Days podcast. We'll see you next year from January 22nd to 24th, 2019.